you to reflect a little bit on the things that have happened in the last year. Over the course of this year, 2020, the whole world has been convulsed by the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and others. People have turned out into the streets all over the globe to protest racism. Tell me what the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna, and Ahmaud have meant to you.
I'm a product of the 60s. I have watched systemic racism, murder Black people for years. I've watched systemic racism, white supremacy, create barriers and blockades around people of color all of my life. I tell people often, I think I put it in a couple of books, that I grew up in a world with two water fountains, two doors, special seating in the back of the room. So the manifestation of all of that, all of those racist ideas have just manifested in a cycle of current day lynching that's not new. I mean, I wished I could be shocked. I wish it would, it could be even some new kind of experience. But I've been watching, systemic racist policies incarcerate and annihilate Black people for many years. I'm 64 years old. This ain't a new game. When I was a kid, I used to have to drink from that colored only water fountain. And I tell my mom, I said, look here, why do I have to drink from that water fountain? It never looked presentable. It never looked as though, it was, for human consumption. And something that dawned on me was as reactive, as a reactionary as my mom was, when I got close to that whites only water fountain, the question for me was, that must be some powerful stuff coming through that fountain. The reality is, the powerful stuff coming through that fountain was the flow of racist ideas that manifested ultimately in the murder of young people who were just living their lives and for some unfortunate reason crossed paths with the byproduct of racist ideas.
How have you and the people of your church responded, especially to this recent surge of awareness around racism and white supremacy?
It's kind of interesting, but we've responded to this recalcitrance with love. And I have seen 500-600 cars a day on our food distribution days drive through our process, and in those cars are white people, brown people, Black people, people of every hue, and there's no better demonstration of the power of unconditional love than to provide what Jesus said. Whatever we did for one of the least of these, we did it also for him. And one thing I've had an opportunity to do over these almost 30 years in ministry, in this one context, is see that the least has almost nothing to do, matter of fact, nothing to do with the color of one's skin. What really happens is the least is also, just like race is a construct. The least is also a sociological construct that basically puts people in a category in our current Western ideal based on their socioeconomic standing. So our response has been love. We love our neighbor, as we love ourselves.
I remember a refrain during your worship service. We love you, and what was the rest of it? There's nothing
we can do about it. Nothing you can do about it. That's right. Yeah, that means I love you in spite of you. That's right. Yeah, in spite of your preconceived notions about me, in spite of what you might have, constructed in your mind, the story you might have created for me. People always create stories for me. People are always looking at me before they know who I am and making some assessment based on my beard, my piercings, making some assessment as to who I probably am, especially in airports. I get mistaken for drug dealers, jazz musicians, and painters, artists.
You don't get mistaken as a pastor?
Yeah, that's not an honorific title these days. I mean, that's not something you really want to be known as necessarily. You prefer to be known as a follower of Jesus who happens to serve the needs of the community. But pastor, they call me Pastor Rudy, and it's an affectionate term in my neighborhood. I let people do it, because it helps them. But I could care less what you call me. Just know that at the end of the day, I am you.